Good morning. Thanks for tuning in. It's Rod from Rod's Books and Relics. I thought I would go over some of the books that I've listed in the last 24 hours and try to point out what makes them listable. So by the end of this video, hopefully you'll have a little better understanding maybe on how to recognize a book that that's just not a run-of-the-mill book, that might have a little bit of value. So I got 3 boxes here, probably about 30 or 40 books. We'll go through some quicker than others. First one I listed is Caribbean Visions, 10 Presidential Addresses of the 10 Presidents of the Caribbean Studies Association. Now that's something that's not going to fly off the shelf. But I listed it, and all these I listed on Abe Books, Advanced Book Exchange. I listed that for $25. It's the cheapest copy on there now. It's in great shape. Who's going to buy this? It's going to take a special customer, somebody researching the Caribbean, maybe politics of the Caribbean region. Also, I have some of these U.S. Congress bound copies of the proceedings of certain hearings. This one was Panama Canal Treaty Negotiations from 1972. Listed that for $15. Here's one from 1961, Guide to Subversive Organizations and Publications. All of these I pretty much listed as my copy is going to be the cheapest copy on Abe. And I use my threshold now for about $8 to $10 because I do free shipping. If it's something, if I could have the cheapest copy at $5, it's really just not going to pay me to list it for that. I'll make like $1 on the book after you take out shipping and the fees. So I think that one I listed about 15. Another book on the Caribbean, Economic and Security Issues, from the Joint Economic Committee, 1993. There's similar ones, International Security Council, Committee on the Sea Lanes and Communications of Asia, Geopolitics of Security in the Greater Pacific Region, Basin. These are not books that you would want to pay a lot of money for, but when you acquire them in a bundle deal or just in a huge lot and you don't have a whole lot of money tied up in them, they're worth listing on there, because once they're listed, they're on there forever. Sometimes I might sell this 20 years from now if I'm still above ground then. The United States and the Persian Gulf, Past Mistakes, Present Needs, $10. And then we get into a little bit more expensive book, Foreign Policy Formulation, a case study of the nuclear ban test treaty of 1963. $30 I listed that at. That's going to be, who's going to buy that? Again, that's a question you should ask yourself all the time. Who's going to buy this? Who's going to want this? Is somebody going to walk in my store down here, my brick and mortar store, and buy this? Probably not. Is somebody going to look for it online, a PhD or a grad student researching foreign policy, doing a paper on the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty of 1963? Yes. Fiction into Film, A Walk in the Spring Rain. This is the chronicle. I've been getting a lot of books lately that are chronicles of behind the scenes of the filming of certain movies. This is Anthony Quinn, and I'm not sure who the actress is off the top of my head. But this book started, it's a University Press book, University of Tennessee Press of all things. And usually if you get a University Press book, that's a good sign. That it might have a little bit of value. Anyway, this is, I listed this at 15. And here's an interesting one. Does Fidel eat more than your father? Conversations in Cuba. This is from the author of this is a Jamaican playwright. He went around, he talked to children and just citizens in Cuba. And I guess the point of the book was asking them how they felt about Fidel Castro. Now, of course, he's long gone now. This book is from 71. Very interesting book. And it unique. $15. Now we get into a little bit, well, here we jump genres here. Westward with the Sun traces the development of animal agriculture and the Fancher family over a period of 10,000 years. 10,000 years. Burr Fancher is a native of the Arkansas Ozarks. Some of these books are good. Family histories, people use them to research genealogy, research their family line. This is part history, part agricultural book. Sounds like it spans a long time period here. $16. And then we jump back into foreign policy, American defense policy since 1945, a preliminary bibliography. $12 on that. All right, so that's the first box. Then we have the Uncivil War. I got into another box of Civil War books lately. Shattering the Historical Myths, signed by the author, $10. Here is the American Alpine Journal. I'm not sure, I don't know how that's going to go or not, but we put it on there as the cheapest listing at $12. It's from 2001. Then we have a couple of more. Campaign for Wilson's Creek. Generally, the more specific the book is, say on the Civil War, if you just get a book, History of the Civil War, it's too broad. And then as longer you do this, you can recognize the publishers, recognize if you've seen the book out and about. If you haven't seen the book in 2, 5, 10 years of book selling, then it's not as common, obviously. Campaign for Wilson's Creek, The Fight for Missouri Begins. I believe this was autographed, $14. History of Fort Sumter, Building a Civil War Landmark. Look, it was in Walmart at one time for $15.99. The History Press, $11 on that. A Boy Named Will. I'd never seen this book, and I'm here in Will Rogers land, Oklahoma. The story of young Will Rogers. 2 copies were online. One for 20-something and one for 120-something. Well, I think the $125 one is way overpriced. So I priced this one at $30. Truth and Other Enigmas. This is, I can't even remember exactly what this was. Harvard University Press. I believe it's a philosophy book. Here's an odd one. 7 partly underground rooms and buildings for water, ice, and midgets. Pamphlet Architecture, number 20. It really is an architectural book. Just has kind of an odd title. There wasn't very many online. $20. Will's War. I believe this is just a novel by a British author. Not too common. $12. Ruth Sheldon Knowles. University of Oklahoma Press, about America's energy famine from the 70s. Or 1980, first edition. I actually have a few copies of this. Constitution and Enabling Act of Oklahoma. This book is from 1912. I priced it at $45. Just 5 years after Oklahoma became a state. Would be worth a little more even if it was Indian Territory. Early book on the Constitution of Oklahoma. Still Life with Bottle. I thought this was a Doonesbury book at first, but it is Whiskey According to Ralph Steadman. Wasn't familiar with that, but it priced out a little bit. Now here's what I talk. This book is what I mean by technical. Sometimes the more technical, the more. It's an architecture, civil engineering book. The Manual of Below Grade Waterproofing Systems. Priced this at $80, and I have the cheapest copy. Here's this book, Trapped Pirates in Alaska, young adult novel. Library binding, ex-library, you have to quote it as such. $18. As you can see, we're finding a wide variety of titles. Here's another kind of local history guy, Fred Starr. Some of his books, some old timer that grew up in the Ozarks, you know, writes about his memories. Fred Starr, Gifts from the Hill, by the author of Up These Hills and Us Climbed the Highest Mountain. Of These Hills and Us and Climb the Highest Mountain. $20. This is, I think, a little bit lesser known work of his. What to Do with Germany. Military book from London. First published in 1941. So the war was already going on between England and Germany, but depending on when this came out, of course, Pearl Harbor was in December 1941. The U.S. hadn't quite been drawn into it all the way, although we were helping the Allies quite a bit. Here's a facsimile reprint of The Escape and Suicide of John Wilkes Booth, $9. And what is this? The Blue Tattoo, The Life of Olive Oatman. In 1851, Olive Oatman was a 13-year-old pioneer traveling west toward Zion with her Mormon family. Within a decade, she was a white Indian with a chin tattoo, caught between cultures. Interesting. And here is a recent, this is a pretty specific Civil War one, and it's a fairly recent printing from 2001. From Arlington to Appomattox, Robert E. Lee's Civil War Day by Day. Was able to price this at $25 and have the cheapest copy online. So that's 2 boxes. Just a few more in here. Critical Years at the Yard by Belton Cobb. This is a British book about Scotland Yard. Another diplomacy book, Diplomacy in the Middle East. Gee, not much going on over there right now, is there? Danny Dunn and the Voice from Space. This hard, you can see this real thick, solid binding. That's what they call library binding. It's just made to stand up to being checked out dozens or hundreds or 2 times. $12. Rick Riordan, you've heard of it. He's written some young adult novels now, but this is an older work of his, signed Southtown. 2-volume trade paperback, Sources of Japanese History. I priced the 2-volume set at $25. There's several listed on Abe at individually Volume 1 or Volume 2, but not too many with both volumes. One more technical book, Manual of Aircraft Drafting. And then here is a locally published book relating to the Mullendore murders, which was a famous true crime case in a huge ranch up around Ponca City. This is about interviews with, I think, the likely culprit of the murders, Chubb. Footprints in the Dew. As you can see, this one is damaged, so you have to list that as a reading copy. Glenn Shirley, Marauders of the Indian Nations, The Bill Cook Gang, and Cherokee Bill. Very nice, clean, tight first edition. I actually have a few of these. I set at 15. 5 more here, looks like. The Child in the Midst. Just a nice, older, aesthetically pleasing book. I think it is of a religious slant. Another memoirs of some old timer. By Gum, I Made It. And here there were no copies of this listed on Abe, this stapled pamphlet. Brief History of the West Fork of the White River Valley. It's over in Arkansas. I priced it at $35. You kind of get to set the market on that. If anybody needs it, most likely they're going to pay $35. The Men's House, Masonic Papers and Addresses. Old Masonic books, always good. And lastly, Monticello and Its Master. Thin, little aesthetically pleasing book on Thomas Jefferson. Price that at $17. Again, 1 or 2 of these might sell today. None of them might sell for weeks. But you put in the legwork in the very beginning, listed them, and now they're on there. You just have to store them. And I mean, you can try to sell them on other avenues, but if you also, but the problem with that is, you know, you might sell it over on eBay or what have you, and forget to delete it on Abe. You get an order for it, and then, you know, then you're up a creek. But anyway, that's gives you an overview of, you know, you notice you didn't see any Grisham, you didn't see any Tom Clancy, you didn't see any insert any other very common book that you see all the time. You didn't see any romance novels. Steer away from those unless there's something really unique about them, which would be signed, first edition, something like that. Thanks. Remember to subscribe if you like the content. Don't smash it. You're not a Hulk. Gently tap it like the cultured individual that you are.